Welcome to a short preview of this Screencasts Online video tutorial.
Today we'll be taking a look at Deckset, a Markdown-based presentation application. Now you may be thinking, why do I need another presentation app for my Mac? I've already got Keynote and it gives me everything I'd ever need to make killer presentations. And you'd be partially right because Keynote is awesome, but it can also be cumbersome. I'm sure I'm not the only one who has been basically done with their presentation content and then spent the next 10 hours messing with all the customization options, trying to get things to look just right. But the problem is that all that time spent tweaking things usually doesn't add much value. It may be worth it if you're delivering a keynote presentation at a big conference, but when you're just trying to put something together quick for the status meeting on Thursday, Keynote can be overkill. And this is where Deckset can really save you a lot of time. You see, Deckset basically takes a simple Markdown document and makes it look like you spent a ton of time creating a killer presentation. With just a few lines of plain text, Deckset can create amazing looking slides that make your next presentation remarkable. You don't have to think about where things should go because Deckset handles the layout automatically. And this significantly reduces the amount of time required for preparing your slides and allows you to create great looking presentations in record time. Just create your Markdown-based content in any text editor, open it in Deckset, and choose a theme. There are several great-looking themes to choose from in Deckset, and in version 2, you can even design your own. And that's not to say that Deckset isn't powerful. There's a ton of features if you really want to customize your presentations, like image filters, code samples, build steps, and more. But if you just want to create a great-looking presentation quickly, you don't have to make a bunch of decisions about features that you'll never use. Everything is controlled from the Markdown you write in your text editor. So if you spend a fair amount of time in text editors already, or like writing in Markdown like I do, Deckset may be the perfect presentation tool for you. Let's get started. Before you can use Deckset, you have to install it, and I want to make sure to point out that you have to buy Deckset from the Deckset website, which is decksetapp.com. Don't be fooled if you see Deckset in the Mac App Store. That is the old version. You definitely want to buy it directly from the developer at decksetapp.com. Once you're at the website, scroll down and you can either download the free trial, or if you're convinced that you want to use it right away, maybe after watching this tutorial, you can click the buy button. And Deckset costs $29 as a one-time purchase, which includes free updates to version 2. Or you can buy Deckset for your team, which gives you a 20% discount. Just select the number of users that you might want. Once you've downloaded Deckset, go ahead and open it. I'm going to open it via Spotlight. And when you open Deckset for the first time, you'll see 5 tutorial presentations, which will walk you through how to do just about anything that you might want in Deckset.
That's just a quick preview of one of this week's Apple-related tutorials from Screencasts Online. Screencasts Online is your premium source of Apple-related video tutorials. All of our members get access to brand new, up-to-date tutorials each week, as well as unlimited access to our entire video archive full of Mac and iOS-related tutorials. You can stream and download all of our videos on your Mac, iPad and iPhone, and even your Apple TV using the members-only Screencasts Online Apple TV app. Membership also includes a complimentary subscription to the digital Screencasts Online monthly magazine, published each month and packed with videos, articles, reviews, as well as hints and tips covering all aspects of the Mac, iPad, iPhone, and all of the other fantastic Apple products. So, if you're ready to start getting the most out of your Apple devices, visit screencastsonline.com today and become a Screencasts Online member.